Long Haochen died in battle against Emperor Feng Xiu. Kair and the team went to the Tower of Eternity to save him. Only the necromancer Elux possessed enough power to resurrect Long Haochen. To do that, a living heart was required. Naturally, Kair, without hesitation, offered her own, but Elux did not let her kill herself for Long Haochen. So how will Long Haochen be resurrected? What will Elux do? In this illusion, Kair gave her heart, but Long Haochen could not live. He embraced Kair, kissed her, and at that moment decided to take his own life. He used the last drop of spiritual energy and was about to drive it into his head, just to be with her in death. But Elux tried to stop him. The holy necromancer, indeed, at first did not understand that they could not live without each other. But Long Haochen, having lost Kair, lost all meaning in life. Without love, everything else is empty. He was like a shadow of his former self. And yet, at the last moment, he heard Kair's voice. A living Kair, who was watching this scene from the side. They embraced with tears. Seeing the embracing couple, the holy necromancer Elux barely managed to say, "You two have won." Right now Long Haochen and Kair were completely immersed in the joy of reunion. However, Long Haochen had not truly been resurrected. Elux had only used an unusual method to bring him back temporarily. Kair anxiously asked, if they had won, shouldn't Elux truly resurrect Haochen? Elux explained that until now it was only an illusion created by his soul. And if he had allowed Kair to sacrifice herself to resurrect Haochen, it would all have been real. But fortunately, that didn't happen, because Haochen himself wouldn't want to live without her. Elux offered him a choice, to inherit his power and live together with the girl he loved, or to refuse and die. Why so? In the original story, Long Haochen hadn't yet met Elux and considered him evil, a calamity of the world, guilty of the destruction of the previous world. Long Haochen was a son of light, while Elux, the embodiment of darkness, so the choice wasn't easy. Kair asked again, could Elux really help him return to life even without her heart? Yes, Elux was the almighty holy necromancer. As he himself said, in this world the things he couldn't do were very, very rare. Since Long Haochen's soul was preserved, he could handle the restoration of his body. But from Elux's side, there was only one condition. Long Haochen had to inherit his power and become the next lord of necromancers. Long Haochen had to become his successor. Otherwise, both of them would die, and Elux would simply fall asleep once more. Haochen thought for a bit, his eyes gradually cleared, and he made his decision. He chose life for Kair's sake. He agreed to inherit Elux's power. He didn't justify himself or hesitate. He simply chose. After all, if he was ready to die for her, then why not live for her, even if it meant giving up his former principles? This decision amazed everyone. Kair was shaken to her core. Even Elux, who expected a painful inner struggle, was stunned. He did not expect that the Son of Light, who was ready to die for his ideals, would so easily abandon them. And then something incredible happened. A powerful explosion occurred in Elux's soul. His inner being began to burn under the influence of holy fire, which suddenly awakened. The energies of light and death clashed within him, causing a devastating burst of power. Long Haochen, without hesitation, embraced Kair, shielding her from the destructive energy. Elux's soul power was so immense that even Emperor Feng Xiu would not be able to resist it. The love between Long Haochen and Kair touched Elux's heart and awakened his old feelings. He told them his story, what led the Son of Light to become a calamity. Necromancer Elux is a character from the anime Soul Land 2 and Throne of Seal. Known by the titles Necromancer, God of Sacred Law, and Undead Calamity, he was originally a Son of Light. At the age of 6, it was discovered that he had a strong affinity with the element of light, and from that point on, he became a light mage. The Emperor personally transferred him to the Royal Academy of Magic to study under Princess Fu Luo, and he fell in love with her. After reaching the 8th level, Elux proposed to the princess and they became engaged. However, after reaching that level, his cultivation progress slowed down, so he left to train further. When he returned to the capital, Elux showed everything to Fu Luo, and she became very interested in the unusual turtle shell technique he had obtained. The princess hoped he would let her study it, but the technique was too dangerous. During a walk with Fu Luo, Elux was surrounded and attacked by a large group of people. Fu Luo stabbed his left chest with a poisoned dagger and took the scroll containing the technique. Thus, the necromancer faced betrayal. Although Elux was seriously wounded by Fu Luo, it wasn't fatal. It took him 2 months to recover from the injuries. When he returned to the capital, he discovered he had been condemned for treason and stripped of his title. Sneaking into the palace, he found out that Fu Luo had conspired with the son of the High Pontiff. They wanted to eliminate Elux. Of course, he was stronger than them, but in the end, all he could do was flee. Later, the emperor issued an order to execute Elux's entire family. He could only watch helplessly as his family members were killed one by one. After the death of his family, the turtle shell technique disappeared due to Elux's overwhelming hatred. From that day on, there was no more light in his heart, only endless rage and resentment. He wanted to destroy everyone who had betrayed him. During his earlier travels, Elux had obtained a black token. This black tile was a legacy of an ancient necromancer. Light and necromancy were supposed to be completely opposing forces, but thanks to his innate abilities, he gradually merged them into one. He trained day and night, growing stronger, all for the sake of revenge. He killed people with a single glance, turning all living beings into the undead. Starting with a small town, Necromancer Elux gradually gathered his undead army. When he returned to the Empire, he already had 1 million soldiers by his side. The Donghua Empire was completely destroyed by Elux. 2 other empires joined forces to wage war against him. During the conflict, Elux killed the High Pope of the Holy See and Fu Luo. An army of 1 billion undead was under his command. However, in the final decisive battle, he was defeated. Elux was seriously injured and cursed with exhaustion. For the next millennia, he endured immense pain and fell into an eternal slumber. It was then that the Tower of Eternity was created to nourish and sustain his physical body. This story of betrayal shocked Long Haochen. Originally, Elux believed that all humans in this world were like that. But seeing the bond between Long Haochen and Kair, he realized he had been wrong. Elux truly changed, which is why later in Soul Land 2, he appears as a positive character who helps Yuhao. But the main question, how will he resurrect Long Haochen? His light enveloped Long Haochen and Kair. As a token of gratitude, he granted Kair the purest form of death energy. Since she had the body of Samsara, this energy would fuse with her perfectly. As for Long Haochen, Elux touched his own forehead, and then a bright light emerged from the depths of his soul. Gradually, this point of light was fully drawn from his soul. When he finished, his body immediately became transparent, far weaker than before. A golden object approached Long Haochen, producing sounds like a heartbeat. Elux explained, "This is the heart I restored for you. Your body will be able to regain all its strength. This heart will become the source of life. I called it the Heart of Eternity, and if I may say so, it is the greatest masterpiece of my life." Long Haochen could not help but gasp in awe. This heart was woven from all of Elux's energy. He compressed it into this Heart of Eternity. Elux extracted all the light essence to turn it into holy power of the purest form. He did not give him the power of a necromancer, but his own power as the previous Son of Light, the purest form of energy. Since all the death energy went to Kair, a sphere of light suddenly burst into the space in the middle of Haochen's heart. He felt an incomparable wave of heat spread through all his limbs and made him instinctively sit cross-legged on the ground. His whole body turned golden. Long Haochen became the master of the Heart of Eternity. Elux himself, one could say, was dying, having given away his power. Kair was even more grateful than Long Haochen, since she was not a child of light and did not harbor hatred toward darkness. She only knew one thing: Elux had just saved her beloved. She felt only gratitude. Elux was preparing to leave this world forever. Before he left, he turned to Kair and asked, could she call him master? Kair called him that without thinking. How could Elux's story not move her? Although Long Haochen also sympathized with him, he absolutely could not forgive his crimes against humanity. Kair was, after all, a girl who had also gone through painful experiences in her youth. Her compassion was much stronger. When Kair called Elux her master, it deeply moved the ancient necromancer. Despite all the evil he had committed in the past, those words awakened forgotten emotions in him. He admitted he was not a worthy mentor, but to hear such recognition from a disciple was true solace before death. At that moment, Elux's pride as a great holy necromancer manifested with special strength. He raised his hand, and into it immediately moved the scythe of the god of death. This artifact, possessing the power of purification, was itself the enemy of all undead. However, in Elux's hands, it was enveloped in gray-black energy that completely suppressed its holy power. This was a clear demonstration of how deep and powerful Elux's control over the powers of death was. He looked with cold pride at the Tower of Eternity, his greatest creation. Elux admitted he did not expect it to evolve so much during his sleep. Now the tower had gained its own consciousness. It had evolved to the level of a super-divine instrument. And Elux was ready to pass it on to Kair. Since she had acknowledged him as her master, that became the final link between them. He renounced control over the tower and bequeathed it to his disciple, so she could use it as a weapon and shield, as protection for herself and her companions. He promised to cleanse the tower's unstable energies, so she and her allies could then absorb this power. This gift opened new horizons for them. With such energy, they could not only leave this place, but become gods. This was not just a farewell, but the final expression of care for his disciple. The Tower of Eternity, his true creation. He knew that one day it could gain its own will, and he had foreseen this. Even if it reached the state of a super-divine instrument, he could still destroy it without much effort. Such was the scale of his power and foresight. As a teacher, he spared no power for the sake of the disciple he deemed worthy. As we see, Elux is one formidable figure. He resurrected Long Haochen by giving him the Heart of Eternity and did much for Kair. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and see you next time.